Hello and welcome to this webinar on getting payroll information right. Your first question might be, what is this webinar about and should I spend time watching it? I'm going to let you know about the most common mistakes we've come across when employers send payroll information to us, and I'll give you tips on how to avoid these mistakes and get your payroll records right first time. So, is this webinar going to be useful for you? If you've decided to watch, you might be completely new to keeping payroll records. Or you might not have much experience. Or you may have run a payroll for a while but have some questions about getting things right. The webinar should be useful to you in all these situations. Mistakes can mean you aren't paying the correct amount to HMRC and can take you time to put right. So the advice should help you to save time and make the correct payments. For those of you who are new to payroll, I'll also let you know where to get lots more information to help you get started. Just a word about your payroll software. You may be using a commercial software package or the HMRC Basic PAYE tools. Because there are dozens of different payroll packages available, I won't be able to show you the screens that you see in your own software. But I will explain what steps you need to take to get things right. Remember, the steps often include checking the instructions in your own software package. Now, it may sound obvious, but it is important to use accurate information and complete the correct boxes in your payroll software. Your payroll creates reports which you then send online to HMRC. These are based on what you've entered when you fill in your details as an employer, when you first record an employee's details, whenever you make a change to an employee's details, and every time you make a payment to an employee. Then you need to pay HMRC what you owe based on your reports, usually every month. If your reports are correct, you can pay the correct amounts to HMRC during the year. When you add your employees, you need to include everyone you pay, no matter how much you pay them. For example, if you pay an employee less than £112 a week, in this particular tax year, they won't have to pay any national insurance, and they might not have to pay tax, but you should still record their details and pay. The information you record about your employees includes things like their name, date of birth and national insurance number, the date they start work with you and the date they leave, their tax code and their national insurance category. Now, it's important to check that you have the correct date of birth for your employees and then that you're using the correct national insurance category. For example, if an employee is under 21, there is no employer Class 1 national insurance due, unless the employee earns more than £827 a week in this tax year. If an employee is state pension age or older, there is no employee national insurance due. So you could pay too much or not enough national insurance if you do get this information wrong. There is a page on the gov.uk website that gives more details about the national insurance categories. And there is also a page that explains all the information your software will report to HMRC. There will be guidance about employee information in your own software to use when you enter employee details in your payroll. We also run another webinar, It's called Getting Started as an Employer. This will be helpful for anyone who is new to running payroll. Once you've entered all of your employees' details in your payroll software, these will be saved unless you make any changes later. You can then enter their pay details every time you pay them. Your software calculates the tax and national insurance deductions to be taken from their pay, as well as your employer national insurance contributions and student loan deductions if there are any. Your next step is to submit this information through your software to let HMRC know the total you are due to pay to HMRC, what you've paid to your employees, and about any employees who have started or left your employment since the last report. Your report about payments, this is called a full payment submission, or FPS for short. You need to send an FPS regularly on or before your payday. If you send an FPS before the payday, please bear in mind that if any information changes, you'll need to send another corrected FPS. If you send an FPS after the payday, you can be charged a penalty, unless HMRC agree you have a good reason for sending it late. You should enter a code letter to give the reason that the FPS is late, and the codes are listed on this page of the gov.uk website. You can see from this example that you'll use code H if you're correcting an earlier FPS. And again, you should always check your software for guidance. You should be able to complete the reason directly from one of the screens in your payroll. You may have different pay days for different employees. For example, you may pay some employees weekly and some monthly. In that situation, you need to send an FPS on each weekly payday and also an FPS for each monthly payday. Did you know that after you send an FPS, you can check how much you owe on your HMRC online account? To do this, log in to your account as normal. You can check your pay-as-you-earn bill at the At a Glance page. You can usually view this from the 12th of the month after you send in your submission. And that's in time to pay by the 22nd if you pay electronically, or by the 19th if you do pay by post. Remember, you need to make your payments in time to reach HMRC by these dates. So, for submissions sent between the 6th of June and the 5th of July, you can view your liabilities from the 12th of July, in time to make the payment either by the 22nd of July if you pay electronically, or by the 19th of July if you pay by post. Now, you may be able to pay once every 3 months, every quarter, if you usually pay less than £1,500 a month. A full payment submission, or FPS, tells HMRC the amount of tax, national insurance and student loan deductions due to HMRC. This is the amount you will need to pay in full unless you claim a reduction. If you can claim any reduction, you need to let HMRC know by sending an employer payment summary, or an EPS for short. And you send this through your payroll software. There are different reasons you may be able to claim a reduction, and these are for statutory payments that you make to your employees, for construction industry tax deductions if your business is a limited company, and for employment allowance. I'll explain about each of these reasons next. You should normally send an EPS for each tax month when you're entitled to a reduction. But if you claim the employment allowance, you only need to send an EPS once, and the reduction will then be calculated automatically every month. In the situations where you need to send an EPS each tax month, you should send it by the 19th of the following tax month. For example, to reduce your payments in the June tax month, send an EPS by the 19th of July. If you send the EPS after the 19th, you will need to pay the full FPS amounts for that month. So in this example, if you send the EPS on the 20th of July, HMRC would apply the reduction to the July tax month and you should pay the full amount due in June. I mentioned that one of the reasons to send an EPS is to claim back statutory payments. You can reclaim most statutory payments that you make to your employees. And these are the statutory maternity pay, statutory paternity pay, statutory adoption pay, and the shared parental pay. You cannot reclaim statutory sick pay though. All employers can reclaim at least 92% of these statutory payments, and some employers can reclaim the full amount of the payments plus an additional 3% compensation payment. This is called Small Employers Relief, and you can find more details on the gov.uk website. You make the claim by sending an EPS to let HMRC know how much you can reclaim. The amount will then be deducted from the full amounts reported on the payment submissions as due to be paid. The EPS will include this information, the amount of the statutory payment you reclaim, also the amount of the compensation you claim if you qualify for it, the tax month the credit is for, and the amount reclaimed for that month. Each monthly EPS report you send will also let HMRC know the total amount you can reclaim for the year to date. This is the figure the HMRC system uses to calculate the reduction month by month. So it is important to check your software instructions for the exact steps to take to submit the EPS through your own payroll. You are likely to find you are asked to enter the amount to recover for each tax month, and the software will also include the year-to-date total in the reports. Another way you can get help to make statutory payments is to apply to HMRC for an advance payment. You can do this if your bill each month based on your FPS reports won't be enough to cover the statutory payments you need to make. Now there's more information about this on the gov.uk website. It's important to know you still need to send an EPS to confirm the amount of the statutory payments you can reclaim each month, even if you get an advance. This is so HMRC can reduce their record of the amount you've had in advance by the amount that you're reclaiming. Let's look at an example of that. This example uses round amounts to make it quicker to follow. Here's Chris and he has two employees, James and Serena. He pays them on the last day of each month. Serena has taken maternity leave from June and Chris is paying her SMP, statutory maternity pay. In June, Chris pays Serena £700 SMP. He's due to pay £200 pay-as-you-earn tax and national insurance to HMRC for that tax month. He applied for an advance because he knew £200 a month wouldn't be enough to cover the SMP he needs to pay. HMRC paid him £4,500 in advance for the tax year. This took into account the £200 tax and national insurance he would normally pay each month. Because his employees are paid monthly, Chris has to send one FPS that month to report pay, including SMP. And to report the £200 he is due to pay HMRC. Now he still needs to send an EPS every month to show the claim for the SMP and the compensation. In June he can reclaim £721, which is 100% of the £700 SMP plus 3% compensation that Chris qualifies for. Chris doesn't need to send a payment that month because the FPS and the EPS reports will show, after the £200 is taken off the £721, that the balance of SMP left to recover is £521. Based on the report, HMRC will deduct £521 from the record of what Chris owes from the advanced payment. So after Chris sends his June reports, the balance of the advance will be recorded as £3,979. If he didn't send an EPS report, the records would still show £4,500 outstanding. Chris should also check his online account each month to confirm there is nothing to pay. Now, in some situations, you can send an EPS to claim back any construction industry scheme tax deductions. They are made by contractors from payments to your business. This will only apply to you if your business is a limited company. It does work as a subcontractor within the construction industry and has had SEIS tax deductions taken from payments made to the company for work done as a subcontractor. You'll need to enter the full amount of the CIS deductions taken from the company's income as a subcontractor in that tax month. You'll get this figure from the payment and deduction statements from any contractors who have paid the company that month. Your software will report total year-to-date CIS tax deductions to HMRC. So again, it's important to check your software instructions for the exact steps to take to complete the EPS. HMRC will automatically calculate an offset of the CIS deductions. This will be worked out using the pay-as-you-earn tax, national insurance and student loan deductions from your FPS reports that month, and the year-to-date CIS tax deductions you have reclaimed on EPS reports. Your company may also be operating as a contractor within the construction industry scheme. If you have also made CIS tax deductions from subcontractors, then HMRC will include these amounts with the FSP figures to calculate the recovery. These amounts will be taken from your monthly CIS return, so you don't report them through your payroll. You should check the company HMRC online account for the balance you need to pay each month. You should keep a record of how much has been offset. You can reclaim any outstanding balance at the end of the tax year. The other reason I mentioned to send an EPS was to claim the employment allowance. Now, most employers can claim this. Since the April 2015, this has included individuals who employ a care or support worker. There are a few types of employers who cannot claim the allowance. For example, from the 6th of April 2016, limited companies with a single director and no other employees will not be able to benefit from the allowance. You can find more details about this and who can claim on the gov.uk website. The employment allowance will reduce your Class 1 employer national insurance each time you run your payroll, until either the full allowance for the year has been claimed or the tax year has ended. From the 6th of April 2016, the maximum allowance has increased from £2,000 to £3,000 a year. You make the claim by setting the employment allowance indicator field in your software to yes. Your software will then create an EPS and you submit this to HMRC. As I mentioned earlier, you only need to claim this once. You don't need to do this again in any later months in the year or in any later tax years, as it's continued and carried over automatically. Your claim will continue each year unless you cancel it. Now, if you're using HMRC's basic pay-as-you-earn tools, you'll find the Yes field for the Add Employer page or from the Change Employer Details page. So you'll select Yes when you first set up your details, or you can select Yes at a later date. The tools will create an EPS for you to submit to let HMRC know that you want to claim the allowance. If you use payroll software, follow the instructions to set the employment allowance indicator to Yes, and then follow the guidance to submit the EPS. Now, you should only change the indicator from Yes to No if you are no longer entitled to claim the employment allowance. Don't change the employment allowance indicator to No when you've reclaimed the maximum £3,000 for the tax year. If you do, your software will report to HMRC that you aren't claiming the allowance, and the records at HMRC will then show you have underpaid by the amount you've reclaimed during the year. Now, as an example of this, let's have a look at Claire. Now, Claire is due to send HMRC the same amount of £560 for Class 1 National Insurance every month. That's made up of £300 Employer National Insurance and £260 Employee National Insurance. Now, she's checked and she's entitled to claim the employment allowance, and she's set the Yes indicator at the start of the tax year in April. And she only does it once. Now, she submitted the EPS, so HMRC records show that she's claiming the employment allowance. Now, for 10 tax months from April to January, a software will report to HMRC that her national insurance bill is reduced by £300, which is the full amount of employer national insurance she was due to pay. A software will not report a reduction for tax months February and March because by then she has reclaimed the maximum £3,000 for the year. So she would pay the full national insurance due in those 2 months. Her software will report a reduction again in the first month of the next tax year, starting the following April. Now, whenever you make a payment to HMRC, it's important to use the correct reference number. The reference number you should use is your Accounts Office reference number. It's 13 digits long and is a combination of letters and numbers, and it will look something like this. HMRC will send this to you when you're registered as an employer. You can also find it on the P30B letter called Paying Pay-as-you-earn Electronically, which HMRC send out beginning at the tax year. Or you'll find it on the front of your PAYE payment booklet if you have one. Every payment you make to HMRC has to be matched to the correct month and year in our records. If you pay on time, this will be done automatically as long as you use the right Accounts Office reference number, and you won't have to do anything else. But if you pay early or late, you need to let HMRC know which tax year and, of course, tax month that the payment is for. You do this by adding sub-numbers at the end of your Accounts Office reference number. So, for example, if this is your Accounts Office reference number and you make a late payment for the tax month 6th of June to the 5th of July 2016, you need to add the year and the month sub-number. So 17 would be for the tax year 2016-17 and 03 for the tax month from the 6th of June to the 5th of July which is the third month of the tax year. So the reference number would become a 17-digit number made up of the Accounts Office reference number with the sub-number 1703. You may also have to make payments of Class 1 National Insurance contributions. These are paid only by the employer and not the employee, and only if the employer provides their employees with benefits, such as health insurance. Your payroll software may calculate how much you need to pay, or you may need to make a separate calculation. You can find out more about expenses and benefits on the gov.uk website. And we also run an expenses and benefits webinar which explains how to deal with them. Now, Class 1A National Insurance have to be paid to HMRC by the 22nd of July each year for the previous tax year. That's if you're paying electronically. If you pay by post, then it's by the 19th of July, a little bit earlier. You'll need to let HMRC know that the payment you're making is for Class 1A. And you do this by using the sub-number 13. Month sub-number 13 is only used for Class 1A National Insurance. So if you were making a Class 1A payment for 2015-16 year, you would use the sub-number 1613. Whatever payment method you use, always check to make sure you include the correct reference number, which is your Accounts Office reference number and not your pay-as-you-earn reference number. Also use the right sub-number if necessary for the payment you're making. Again, you can check your HMRC online account to see if your payment has been received. This will normally be updated by 6 working days after you've made your payment. And remember, you'll need to tell HMRC if no payment is due. So if you haven't made any payments for employees for at least one tax month, you'll need to send an employer payment summary, an EPS, to let us know. If you don't, HMRC will send you a notice estimating how much you owe, and you may have to pay a penalty. You need to send the EPS to us by the deadline, which is the 19th of the month, following the tax month when no employees were paid. So, for example, if you didn't make any payments to employees in the tax month, 6th of January to the 5th of Feb, you would have to let HMRC know by sending an EPS by the 19th of February. If you're using the basic pay-as-you-earn tools, you'll find the link to create an EPS in the Employer menu. Or you need to check your software instructions. There is sometimes confusion around the use of payroll identification numbers, or IDs for short, particularly when it comes to the change of payroll ID. Many payroll software packages automatically allocate payroll IDs to each individual employee. If yours doesn't, for example, if you're using the HMRC Basic Pay-as-you-earn tools, then it doesn't do it. But you can choose to assign payroll IDs to your employees if you want. This next section has some straightforward rules to follow around their use. Each payroll ID should be unique. Don't reuse a previously used payroll ID. If you do, you'll create a duplicate record and the payroll information you report will be wrong. An employee's payroll ID should stay the same within the same employment. If for any reason you choose to change your payroll ID within the same employment, you need to inform HMRC. For example, if you change your payroll software, the new software may automatically allocate new payroll IDs to your employees, so watch out. So this happens, you will let HMRC know on your next FPS. So how do you do this? Well, on your next FPS, include the old and the new payroll IDs and select the payroll change indicator box. Don't include your employee's original start date. You might find that your software doesn't allow you to do this. For example, HMRC Basic Tools doesn't have a payroll change indicator box. What you would do in these circumstances is make sure that the pay in the period and the year-to-date pay information is correct. So the year-to-date pay figure should include previous pay in the year under the old ID to show this is a continuing employment. HMRC systems will pick up the fact that there's been a change of payroll ID. Say, for example, you change your employee's payroll ID, then you next pay him £100, and his previous pay-to-date figure is £10,000. The figures to enter on the FPS are the taxable pay in the period of £100, and the taxable pay year-to-date would be £10,100. Remember to check your own payroll software for any additional instructions. So we've looked at what to do if an employee's payroll ID changes within the same employment. But what do you do about payroll ID if you re-employ someone? In other words, you take someone on who you've employed in the past. You should always use a new payroll ID. Never reuse the previous one. And if you've re-employed someone in the same tax year, you need to remember to restart their pay-to-date information from zero. We produced a short YouTube video on payroll ID change, which you can find on the HMRC YouTube channel. So why not check it out? If you employ someone for, say, a week or a month to do one piece of work, and you only make one payment to them, then you would use a pay frequency of 1 followed by the letter O. This stands for one-off. If subsequently you need to make a correction on the same payroll ID, make sure you use the same pay frequency of one-off. But remember, you'll also need to check your own payroll software instructions. Now, you might never make a payment to an employee after they've left, but we do find employers often send incorrect information when this does happen. I'll start by explaining exactly what is meant by payments after leaving before we look at how to deal with them. Typically, when an employee leaves, you would add the leaving detail to your payroll record and include the date on your next full payment submission. And then you would print off and give your employee a P45. So when we talk about payments after leaving, we're talking about a payment you make to an employee after they've actually left your employment and after you've given them a P45. You will have reported the date of leaving on the full payment submission, or you'll be reporting it on the payment after leaving FPS. So what are the steps you should follow if you find yourself in this position? You use code 0T on a non-cumulative basis to calculate the tax due. You are likely to see this shown in your software as week 1, month 1 basis. This will mean tax is calculated only on earnings in that individual pay period. You deduct national insurance unless it's a redundancy payment, and any student loan repayments using the normal pay period. But if it's an irregular payment like accrued holiday pay or an unexpected bonus, treat it as a weekly payment. You include the actual payment date in the relevant box on the full payment submission. Put the employee's original date of leaving in the relevant box in your payroll software and select the payment after leaving indicator. Now the next point to consider is what figure to include as the employee's pay to date. How you show your employee's pay to date details depends on whether the employee left in the current tax year or in a previous tax year. If you're making the payment after leaving in the same tax year as the employee left, it will be shown in one of two ways, depending on whether the same payroll ID is used or a new one is allocated. We'll look first at an example where the employee left in the current tax year and the same payroll ID is used. If you pay your employee £100 after they've left and their previous pay to date was £10,000, then the figures to report are taxable pay of £100 and taxable pay in the year to date £10,100. In the second example, the employee also left in the current tax year, but a new payroll ID is allocated in your software. The pay and previous pay in the year figures are the same. The taxable pay in the period would be £100, as in the previous example, but the taxable pay in the year-to-date figure in this case would be £100 on its own. If, however, the payment is made in the tax year after the employee left, then the figures to report will be the taxable pay in the date was £100 and the taxable pay in the year to date is also £100. So that's the process to follow if you're making a payment after leaving. But remember, this is only for payments made after a P45 has been issued. You should always include the original date of leaving on the FPS submitted for the payment made after leaving. Never send a nil payment after date of leaving in an FPS. You shouldn't give your employee another P45. Instead, give them written confirmation of the payment showing the gross amount of the payment and any deductions you've made. Always use the tax code 0T on a non-cumulative basis to calculate the tax due on the payment. And finally, remember to check your own payroll software guidance for any additional instructions. We've also produced a short YouTube video on payments after leaving, which again you can find on HMRC's YouTube channel. And there is also guidance on the gov.uk website. If you need to correct an error in your payroll, you can find detailed guidance on this page on the gov.uk website. The guidance explains if you need to find and report details of wrong pay or deductions for a previous tax year, you won't be able to send in FPS. You'll need to send an earlier year update to correct the information. In an earlier year update, you must show only the difference between the figures you reported and the correct figures, not the full correct figures. If your payroll software can't send an earlier year update, you can use HMRC's Basic Pay-As-You-Earn tools to send one. So let's recap the main points that we've looked at in this webinar. Make sure the information you record on your payroll software is accurate. Include everyone you pay, however much you pay them. Accurate information includes your details as the employer, your employee's details, the pay amounts, the starting and leaving dates, and of course the tax codes. As we've seen, correct date of birth and national insurance categories are particularly important. Go online regularly to view your HMRC online account and check what you owe. Send an EPS if you're claiming a reduction in the amount you pay in HMRC. For example, if you're claiming back statutory payments. You also need to send an EPS if you haven't paid any employees in the tax month. Remember, even if you've had funding in advance, you still need to send an EPS each month to reclaim statutory payments. Don't change the employment allowance field to no when the £3,000 maximum has been claimed. Always use the correct Accounts Office reference number when you make a payment to HMRC, and include the year and month sub-number if necessary, for example if you're making a late payment or you're making a payment of Class 1A National Insurance. If you pay on time, your payment will automatically be allocated to the correct month and year. Except that Class 1A payments always need the year sub-number and the month sub-number of 13. A payroll ID should be unique to that employee and employment. Don't reuse them. If there's been a change of payroll ID in the same employment, for example because you've changed your payroll software, don't forget to notify HMRC on your next FPS. If you need to make a payment to your employee after they've left your employment, then follow the steps given in the guidance. And always remember to check your own software guidance for any additional instructions. If you need further help, you can sign up to receive regular emails from HMRC. The emails highlight the help and support we provide for small businesses. We have an online learning package for newly self-employed customers and for new employers. These include practical case studies, and you can work through the package at home and at your own pace. Gov.uk website is the best place for government services and information. Visit the website for plain and simple help and guidance. You'll find lots of bite-sized tax information videos on our YouTube channel. If you need reassurance, quick help, or are just interested in finding out more about a subject, then this may be the option for you. Why not follow us on Twitter to receive official news and information? As well as the @HMRC.gov.uk Twitter account, HMRC now has another account to give help to small and medium enterprises. This is @HMRC Business. The tweets are more specific, focusing on the range of help and support on offer, including webinars, emails and YouTube and e-learning. Finally, I've mentioned during the webinar that I'd let you have links to more information on the gov.uk website. They are shown on the next 3 screens. You may want to pause the webinar and take screenshots or screen prints so you can keep them for future reference. Don't forget you can pause, rewind and replay parts of this webinar at any time, and you can watch the whole webinar again in full whenever it suits you. Thank you for your time. Goodbye.